Well, today we are going to have another conversation with Lori Rabey. Now, Lori has traveled the United States and Canada in her leisure travel van, pulling her little Subaru Crosstrek, and she has just the most amazing adventure. So I'm super excited. I think this is our third or fourth conversation we've had, so I'm really, really excited. So let's jump in with Lori right now and see what she's been up to and what we can learn from all of her travels as she crisscrossed the United States and Canada. So let's go to Lori right now. All right, here we are back with Lori Rabey. And Lori, you just, I say you just got back from Mexico, but it's been about a month now that you got back from Mexico.
Yes.
And you're in California.
No, actually, today I'm in Oregon.
Oh my word! Are you kidding me? That's awesome.
I just crossed over 2 days ago.
Okay, listen. Here's the funny thing. I could remember when you were still waiting on your leisure travel van. Okay,
Wow.
and in the forum on the Facebook group, I would see obviously you as you were preparing, you were getting your things. You knew you wanted a Subaru. You knew all of these things, right? And I had my leisure travel van, and I was watching you as you were waiting to get your leisure travel van. Now you have a leisure travel van, and guess what? I don't have one.
Uh-oh. But you have a beautiful
I know, we sold our leisure. Yeah, I do have an Airstream, but we sold our leisure travel van. And so, anyway, so I'm not a leisure travel vanner, and you are, and anyway, I'm kind of sad. But anyway, we will get another leisure travel van at some point for sure. So lots happened in the last 6.
We're still friends.
Yeah,
friends.
Yes, I'm hoping everybody, all my leisure travel van friends are still my friends. But anyway, but yeah, lots happened in the last 6 months, and so we have just really, I haven't been making videos. I haven't been doing all kinds of stuff, but now we're getting our life settled back down. And hopefully I can continue making some content. And the first one I want to do is talk to you because you are crisscrossing the country. So how long has this last leg been? When did you leave Calgary?
I left Calgary January 1st. And I spent a good part of January, actually most of January and part of February in Arizona. And I teamed up with a good solo LTV friend, Tana Grigg, and she and I traveled together for a month, which was really quite cool because I usually don't travel with anybody. Then I joined the Mexican caravan on February 20. Well, it doesn't matter. The last third of February, and I spent 5 weeks doing the entire Baja, all the way down and all the way back. And then for the last month and a half, I really have been in California, and I saturated California this year.
That's amazing. So now then, in our first conversation, I don't know, that's a couple of years ago, I think, you were really just getting started. You had the big, when your engine, the oil, where you got stranded at the top of a mountain anyway, right?
That's right.
You need to go back and watch Lori's videos with me in the playlist because it's pretty amazing what she went through. And did you have to have a whole new engine? I don't remember.
No, they fixed the one that I had. It was fixable. So, but it did take a week to figure it all out.
Yeah, I remember you were texting me, and it was just a terrible situation for you. And so anyway, but what I want to talk about today is because you are probably as seasoned of an RVer as anyone can hope to be. I mean, you have been across the United States, you've been across Canada, you've been down to Mexico several times now. And so anybody who is wanting to get into the RV lifestyle, leisure travel vans, whatever it may be, I want to talk about what they should expect, what you've learned over the course of the last couple of years using you call your LTV the B, and what you've learned. So let's just get into a little bit of stuff. What's the biggest thing you've learned over these last several years of crisscrossing the United States, Mexico, and Canada?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that because I'm a solo traveler, the reason why I like to go to campgrounds and I don't just go in the middle of nowhere and boondock is that brings the social aspect into my world. And camping people are a really cool group of individuals that are very like-minded. I've had probably in the 3 years that I've done this, maybe 5 or 6 people next to me that I really didn't enjoy. But think about how many nights. Most of my trips are 190 nights to 200 nights. And if I can say that for just 5 people, that's like not even 1%. So
yeah, that's great.
I so enjoy the community. That's the biggest thing I learned is how positive and inclusive and like-minded the community is that I've become a part of.
Well, that's great. So now you say you're going 190 nights, 200 nights, and I know you plan meticulously. I mean, except for today, I understand today wasn't such a good plan. You went to the wrong spot and you had to move while we were about to start this. But anyway, so how do you plan 200 days of trip? I mean, most people are going to go a week at a time, a weekend, maybe 2-3 weeks, maybe a summer. So how do you plan? How do you do this?
So the biggest impetus for me that it started with was to get away from snow. So that in and of itself can take up to a week to reposition from Canada to far enough south where you can de-winterize and stay de-winterized. And then I come up with themes. I'm an avid lifelong learner. I love history of all kinds. I'm a Civil War buff. I love anything First Nations, anything Black history. I've added Mexico now. This is my second trip to Mexico, and I'm planning an extensive trip next year. I might actually spend up to 3 months in Mexico next year. But I like cultures. I like learning things. I like seeing new places. I have now gone to over half of the national parks in the United States. I can't tell you how many state parks I've seen, but it's huge. I've done 2/3 of the state parks in Georgia alone, and I think there's like 50 state parks. So I think once I get a theme, like this year was Mexico. And as I started to plan to get Mexico and then go around Mexico, all of a sudden there's a rally back in British Columbia that became the end part of this trip. It's the Sunsetters Rally, and I met quite a few of those people at the LTV rally last year, and I really wanted to do a Canadian-themed rally with Canadian RVers, because I haven't yet. And that became, because it's in BC and it's on the West Coast, that became the West Coast trip. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm in Cabo San Lucas. So I have driven the number 1 highway, or the 101, or whatever you want to call it, all the way from Cabo San Lucas to here. And that became the main theme of this year's journey.
Wow. And so what tools do you use to plan these trips and to find your campgrounds? And so like for where you are right now, you're in a state park, I understand.
Yes, I am in Sunset State Park.
So, and how do you find this? And how do you use recreation.gov? What do you use?
So the number 1 tool that I use is RV Life Trip Wizard. And the
Okay.
nice part about that, it is a subscription base. I think I pay $39 a year. So it's not a
Hmm.
hefty amount. But hang on. It you can set the parameters to see every kind of campground there is. You can see national parks, state parks, regional parks, city parks, BLM land, national park recreational land, and I can see it across Canada, North America, like North America wide. I see Canada, I see the US, and every single campground we stayed in Mexico was on RV Trip Wizard. So I like to use that app because I can book off of our RV Trip Wizard as well. I like to book
Hmm.
my stays. Every single night was booked before I left Calgary. That's just me. I know there's a lot of people that like to just fly by the seat of their pants. But as a solo traveler, I don't have the ability to drive and look for a campground. And I think I know the buzz right now because of what's going on in the Baja right now. I don't like to boondock. That to me, for me, is setting me up to be a target. So I like to stay in state parks and national parks because there are campgrounds and there are people and there is a ranger who knocked on my door, as you saw 10 minutes ago. So
Yeah.
it's my way of staying safe and happy on the road. And I don't have to think about where the next day is going, where I'm going to stay the next day, or where do I dump or whatever. I build into my trip Harvest Hosts. So I do use Harvest Host and Boondockers Welcome. I do stay at Corps of Engineering parks. I think those are
Hmm.
amazing. If you have not tried a Corps of Engineering park, you are missing out. They always have water. They're huge spaces. I know the number one reason why people don't like going to campgrounds is because they say you have neighbors. Well, at a Corps of Engineering campground, you can build a whole house and have a barn, and then you'll have your neighbors. So it's there's also iOverlander. I don't use it a lot because I don't boondock, but I know that my boondocking friends live by iOverlander. And in the Baja, it was a great way to navigate because you could download the offload maps, and we could navigate throughout Mexico using iOverlander, which I found very useful. So there's so many different national, like recreational gov comes up in RV Trip Wizard. It will take you right to the state website or the national park website. So that's kind of why I like using RV Trip Wizard, because it's all kind of in one space.
Yeah, and we use RV Trip Wizard, and a couple of things that I absolutely love about it, because I only like to drive maybe like 300 miles a day, 400 if I'm really wanting to book it, but it'll give you that radius and give you
Yeah.
the parks like on the edge of that, right? So I know I can hit right where I'm wanting to go. And also you can go filter if you want to stay at a Corps of Engineer, you just click the Corps of Engineer and just show you the Corps of Engineers,
Yeah.
right?
I love
So
those
I
concentric
also,
circles. The circles
yes,
are
I'm
the
a huge
best.
fan of yeah, I'm a huge fan of RV Trip Wizard. Okay, now then, once you get to a spot, kind of, I'm sure you've got a major routine now. I mean, you just had to pack up and move and get back on here within 30 minutes. And so tell us about a little bit about your routine. When you get to a park, what do you do?
Well, there's always checking in. And that's where I ask for the park map. And I also ask them when I check in, what are the cool things to do in the area? If they had only one day to see something in the area, what would that be? And it's interesting, especially in national parks. I have done some incredible hikes that I probably wouldn't have known about because I have asked the people in charge. Then I will check out the camp spot before I back into it or pull into it. Doesn't matter. Sometimes I get pull throughs. And I have to unhook my car. Now, that's probably the most interesting thing that I have to do before I set up my campsite. It's easier to unhook my car if I'm straight and level. So I have to assess where I'm going to do that and to be out of the way of most people. Then I back in. The first thing I do is hook up the electrical, and my EMS electrical plug that I have that I put on the post before I plug in, that saved me many times this year, especially in Mexico. So I check.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. I check the electrical current, then I will hook up my RV, and then I will level. Once I'm level, I get the slide out. I do have magnet shades, which are something that I have decided go on every day, even if it isn't sunny, because they tend to cut the moisture inside my rig by about 90%. So,
that's a good tip.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it keeps the windshield warmer. The windshield doesn't get as cold.
Right.
And it's been really helpful, especially here in Oregon in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon
Yeah.
could be a little nicer to me. It would be nice to have some sunshine.
Yeah, I would say, I assume, Oregon's beautiful though. I love Oregon. In fact, we're going to try to get up there this summer as well. And so you gave two great tips. First of all, I didn't even think about this. Asking either the park host, park ranger, like if there was one thing to see. I love that tip. That's a great tip. And then the second tip is empirical. I can't tell you how smart this is to test your pedestal before you plug your rig into it. So
Yep.
I've had that. I've had some reverse polarity or some issues where that thing was just wrong and it would blow your breaker. You could do damage. So always test. Okay, now then I know what you're going to say on this next bit because you love your Subi so much, which is, are you still happy you tow a car and is it worth it?
100%. I think I've converted at least 20 or 30 LTVers to at least tow some of the time. To have all of my equipment, my kayak, my bike, extra storage, like my clamshell goes into the Subi, my fire pit goes into the Subi. I have chairs that most LTVers would be jealous of because I put them in the Subi. But the Redwood National Forest was a really good example of why I like to tow my car. I went on roads that I know some LTV people have taken their LTVs up, but they are not meant for anything bigger than a truck, wider than a truck. Most of the roads in the National Redwood National Park are one lane, but they're in both directions. So you have to share the one lane with the traffic coming at you. It reminded me a lot of Mexico, actually. But I like to have the ability to go and see places that I wouldn't be able to see because you shouldn't really drive an RV to some of these places. Even the roadside turnouts can be really hard. Now, sometimes I have to forego a roadside turnout because I am a little bit longer, but a lot of the California roadside turnouts aren't even big enough for an LTV. Or they have huge potholes that would swallow the front end of your RV. So it's allowed me to take the rig to the next location, and then I use my car to see everything. I can park normally in parking lots. I can go to the store if I need to. When I was on the California coast near Russian River, I went to all the wineries I wanted to easily because I had my Subaru. So
yeah,
I think it was the best.
I was going to say
It was the best.
Yeah, no, I was also going to. Yeah, I was going to say too is when you bring up those potholes, because I remember in ours, I went over this pothole that dropped the entire back end of mine, and it broke off the sewer pipe. Right,
Yep.
Just split it in half. Right, And so, yeah, you don't want to take your, that thing is not made to go sightsee on places that it shouldn't go, for sure. And so, yeah, having that car gives you that freedom. And, we bought the Maverick to do that. I still have that Maverick, by the way. We never did hook it up to tow and never towed it. I never towed a car with my leisure travel van, so I don't know what that experience is like. And so, but you say it's 100% worth it.
I do. I really, really do. It takes, if you get the right brake system and towing package, it takes 2 minutes to hook and unhook your car.
Okay, so everybody's going to want to know, what brake and tow package do you have?
I use the Blue Ox tow base plate with the tow arms, and then I got the Demco stay and play brake system. And that's wired into the Subaru. So it's not that little box that you move in and out. I just thought that that was going to be another step that I could make a mistake on. The nice thing about the Demco Play and Stay is it continually charges the battery while you're towing. So although I did have one time this year when it was the Subi's battery was going bad, actually, and I couldn't start the Subaru. But for the most part, I think that's happened once a year for 3 years. And now it hasn't happened at all since I changed the battery. So
Oh, wow.
you
Yeah,
have
a
to
lot of
get,
people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand. If you don't have the right setup, you will run your battery down just towing down the road a few hours.
yes. Yeah, at least 2 hours and you would have a dead battery. There are some cars out there, if you're looking to look for a tow, their manuals are great places to read about what you need to do when you're towing the car. And there are several cars where you have to stop every 2 hours and run that car. So, and I think it has something to do with the lubrication. But
Yeah.
the cool thing, the reason why I landed on a Subaru was it had the least number of things you had to do with it, either hooking it up, getting it ready to tow, or while you're towing.
Yeah. Now I've done a couple of videos on tow vehicles as I was shopping for a tow vehicle, trying to decide. Crosstrek was always on my list, right? Until we found the Maverick. And that was only because the big caveat with a Crosstrek is it has to be a manual transmission. You cannot
That's right.
tow an automatic. So you have to have a manual transmission. And even then, the Crosstrek doesn't really support it. It's obviously can be done. I mean, they're being towed. There's thousands of them being towed all the time. But yeah, definitely don't buy a automatic Crosstrek thinking you're going to tow it, because you're not.
Now
The Maverick.
there is a new tow vehicle out there that I think people should look at, and that's I think it's the Chevy Blazer.
Yeah, I heard good things about that. That it's a real simple weight.
Yes.
It's a good weight for a Sprinter van. I think it's like 3,600 pounds, probably about like what your Subaru is.
And it's cute.
And so,
It's really cute. I've seen it on the road and I would have thought about that because I think it's an automatic transmission. So if you're looking
yeah, I'm
for
sure.
automatic transmission, that's a new one that's just hit the market that I think people should think about.
Yeah, definitely. The Maverick and the Trailblazer, I think, are two lightweight automatic transmission that you can do. Okay, so now then, so many people right now are getting RVs. Obviously, the RV boom is still going on. Maybe not as strong as it was during COVID, but people are still getting their RVs every day. You see on the forums pictures of them at the dealership taking delivery. What are the big pitfalls that you discovered that you don't do anymore? Like, what's something that you could give some advice to? Like, okay, you think you're going to do this, but you're really not, or don't do this. Double check that. Give us some advice.
Well, I think everybody who has a macerator, and for those who don't know, a macerator is the electronic way of dumping your tanks. I think everybody who has a macerator has at one point in time forgotten to take the little knobby off the end.
And then that's a natural disaster, quite
It's a,
literally, right?
it's a spouting, snaky, natural disaster.
Oh yeah.
Now, thank
I didn't
I haven't done
yeah,
it
I
this
didn't have
year.
the macerator. No, no. Yeah, that's not fun. So yeah, if you get the macerator, so how do you not forget? What step can you do? Just make a checklist or what? How can you not
Well,
forget that
some
macerator?
people have gotten things and attached it, like a yellow. I know on the LTV website, there's someone that has a tag that's attached to their little knob that is bright yellow. I think what I do is I run through in my brain exactly each step that I have to do. And the biggest piece of advice is I never let anybody talk to me while I'm setting up or taking down. If someone interrupts me, I just say, "Excuse me, but could I please do this?" And then you can ask me any question that you want to ask me. But I need to do it, and I need to engage my brain and make sure I'm doing all the steps. And like you said, at almost full timing in my RV, these things become rote and they're easy, but that's when you make mistakes. When you don't pay attention completely, that's when the little things you might miss. Like sometimes it's the turning the brake system on. And I can tell when I haven't turned it on because when I go to do the first brake, I can't feel it engage. So those are the little things that you miss, the little knob on the end of your macerator hose. I always walk around my vehicle now, always. After I've put everything away, before I leave my campsite, I do a periphery around the RV. I've seen people pull out with slides engaged, windows open, pieces of equipment still attached to their RVs. So that's just something that I added this year because Mexico, we left very early in the morning every morning. It was an 8 o'clock start every day. And I just started doing that because I was afraid that I was going to miss something because I was half asleep.
No. Yeah, so that I think that's a great tip then. So if you're just getting started in RVing, or even that's a great reminder is just don't let anybody talk to you while you're setting up or tearing down mostly because it's tearing down that you're gonna forget to leave something hooked up and drive off or something. And my sister and brother-in-law, they actually drove off with their awning out last year. And so, so that was like a $9,000 new awning they had to buy. So anything can happen, and so that is a fantastic tip. All right, so now then, how do you meal plan? So obviously, you're in a leisure travel van. It's a small RV, not a lot of storage. The refrigerators are not that large. So tell us about your meal planning. Tell us about how much you store and what you take along.
So this year I tried something new. I realized that when I go, my very first day, I always cross an international border. So there are things that I don't stock up in my RV simply because they can't go across the border. But this year I realized that I could take frozen prepared meals. And that was something I never did before. So this year I did stew and spaghetti, and I had 8 meals of each, and I froze them flat in freezer Ziploc bags so that I could stack them. Some people stand them up. I stack them on top of each other, and I got about 8 or 9 meals of each into the freezer. Now, it didn't allow me to carry ice, so I did something new with ice this year. I got little teeny round Tupperwares with lids, and I'd fill that, and I'd get this big block of ice when I needed ice, and I could make ice whenever I wanted to this year. I didn't have to go and buy it. Once I get fully stocked, I have had to learn not to overshop. because there isn't a whole lot of space in these RVs. And every week and a half, I will build in a day where I will do a shop day. And I try to plan meals and of course it's based on the weather and it's based on how active that you've been. I'll change up my meal plan, but I'm really trying to eat through the food that I buy before I go and buy a lot more food.
Yeah, because those refrigerators are not large.
No. And overstuffing them can cause problems with the refrigerator. So
Yeah, for sure. And if you get it too close to the back of that refrigerator, that will freeze. Something will freeze on you. That's supposed to be in the refrigerator.
I've gotten better with vegetables, especially lettuce. Lettuce would always freeze on me, and I didn't really know what I was doing wrong. And Tana, my LTV solo friend, gave me a real good tip with lettuce. We wash it, then we cut it to the sizes that we want. We lined a plastic bag with paper towel, and we stuff all the lettuce back into the bag between the paper towels. And I haven't had lettuce freeze on me since then.
Okay, well, that's good. If you're getting a newer leisure travel van, you won't have the same refrigerator that Lori or I had. And so hopefully they're better. I'm not sure. I think they're all 12 volt now, compressor instead of absorb. Okay, so speaking of like things, so what do you think, what do you use to make your RV life more comfortable? Like gear or technology? What are you using? For example, what are you on the internet now? Are you still using that Epic Off-Grid?
Yep, I still use the Epic Off-Grid. It has performed like a champ again this year. It did work in Mexico. But the problem with where I went in Mexico this year was a lot of times we were in the middle of nowhere. And there is very little cell phone signal in Mexico. So I have learned next year when I go, I'm actually going to rent a Starlink. I don't want to buy one, but I know of someone in California that rents Starlinks, and I will rent it for going to the Baja.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah. Well, I will say Epic actually has a new router now. In fact, that I'm using now. They sent me one a while back that actually has a better signal as well as this new antenna. But anyway, so you have but the one you're using still works flawlessly then while you're in the United States then.
Yeah. And
Cool.
I'm going to test it for Canada for them. Because I am Canadian and have a Canadian cell phone account, I'm going to get an extra SIM card and I'm going to see if it works. Last year when I went across Canada, it worked all the way across Canada because most people don't know, most Canadians live within 2 hours of the U.S. border.
Right.
And that was far enough to still get my American signal. Because I have an American.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, and I phoned them up and I said, I know this isn't supposed to work in Canada, but I've been getting it to work in Canada. So they've asked me to try it out with a SIM card inside of it and see if it really does work. Mexico works fine.
Micah's fantastic with Epic Off-Grid. I mean, I had something go wrong and they always are really fast about turnaround and making sure that it works, and ours still work. In fact, this new router is working even crazy. I got over 500 megabits a second down with that unlimited Verizon. So so the new router is pretty crazy. So now then, what else would you say? Okay, that solves internet. What about, are there any other gear gadget that you would say definitely get, or something like don't get, you're not going to need?
I think one of the best purchases, there have been several really, really top quality purchases, but one of the best purchases I made was getting the Magna pots that nest in each other. It's a full set of pots that breaks down and nests inside each other, and it has a strap. They don't make any noise when I'm going down the road. They all sit together really nicely, and they really are really nice cookware to use. They clean up exceptionally easy, which is nice when you're in an RV. And they were expensive, but I think they were worth every penny that I put into them.
Now, do you use your propane stove, or do you use an portable induction stove?
I use my propane stove. I have a portable induction, and I also have my barbecue, and that cookware can go on all three of those things.
That's nice. So yeah, so you just got to remember, if you're going to use an induction, you just got to have the bottom, a magnet has to stick to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So if a magnet sticks to the bottom of your pan, you can use it on an induction. Okay, that's good. Like when you say expensive, like how expensive?
Well, if you get them on a sale, it's pretty good, like maybe $200 and some dollars. If I think full price, they're about $400, but everybody waits, and Amazon has great sales, and that's when, like, just keep watching Amazon. And is there a function where you could put it in and say, let me know when it goes on sale?
Yeah, in fact, there is. I use something plug-in called Honey, and I think PayPal owns Honey. But anyway, yeah, so it'll give you price history, and it'll email you when something you're looking at goes on sale. But yeah, that's a pretty good investment. Then, if you pay $400, definitely that's a good investment. But you say it's worth it. So
yeah, it really is worth it.
That's fantastic.
The metal step that I have outside. So you know that for 2 years I first was waiting for my knee replacement. Then last year was my knee replacement. This year is going really great, which is nice. But getting in and out of the RV was so hard that a friend of mine said, get yourself one of these steps. So it's kind of like, you can just get a Rubbermaid step if you want, but this one was like our LTV tables. It was powder coated, it was steel, it has adjustable legs, and it gives you a really great platform when you step out of your RV. Because that last step down is not a coated step. Like, it's quite a ways down there, and you have to do it very close to the RV. The nice thing about the step is you step out and move away from the RV. So it gives you a place to land before you hit the ground. And I think it helps anybody who has a hard time getting in and out of their RV. So that was Camping World.
Yeah, I think that I have that same step system for our Airstream, and I'll put a picture of it up and a link if somebody wants that. So if it's the same one, yeah, because you can adjust the feet so it can be tall or it can be short.
Yeah,
it all folds up. It's just like small, right?
Yep, and it fits in my back bin, and it can be, and it's a quality product. So for 3 years, like, it hasn't scratched, it hasn't rusted, it hasn't warped or anything. And I've really, really enjoyed having that step. I think my clamshell would be another thing that I think, especially if you're going to be in the southeast when it gets buggy, even in Canada in the summer, mosquitoes are nasty. And those clamshell pop-ups, I can set it up and take it down within 2 minutes by myself. And now I store mine in the Subaru because I got the little bit bigger one. But I do know people just lay it on the inside of their RV when they're moving between places as well, if it doesn't fit inside one of your storage bins. My propane fire pit, big positive on this trip. There were a lot of places I could not have a fire in the fire, like a burning fire, but they always allowed me to have my propane fire pit. So, and I've learned how to make s'mores on it. I ran into a couple of guys at Yosemite, and they made me s'mores over a propane fire pit, and now that's how I do it. It really works. I was afraid to drip stuff into my propane pit, but they showed me how to do it without lighting them on fire, and how kids do with their marshmallows. So I think, and it's going to be another burn year in Canada. So if you're going to Canada, you better have a propane fire pit, because I don't think they're going to let you have a fire anywhere in Canada this year.
Okay, send me the information on that, and I'll put a link for it down below if somebody's interested in that. Now, do you run from your onboard propane on the LTV, or do you use a portable tank?
So I decided to get a 10-pound portable tank because the nice thing about that is I had four campsites along rivers this year, and I took the whole thing right down to the side of the river and had my fire down on the bank of the river. And I like the fact that I get away from the RV. I mean, a lot of people like sitting outside and that's their thing to do,
Hmm.
but that's not my thing to do. And it's nicer to take it onto a cliff, or some of the beaches in California allowed me to take it down onto the beach. So I just hauled everything down and sat down and enjoyed my fire pit. You can do both though. You can run it off here, but don't get too long of a cable. That's what they tell you. The longer the cable, the lower the fire is going to be. So,
Yeah, and then you also have to, because that's regulated coming out of the LTV, and so if you got a regulator on your fire pit as well, you're not going to get any flame. So I think it's smart getting. I have an Ignic. Is yours an Ignic? 10 pound.
yeah, yeah.
The brand? Yeah, yeah. And they come in and they have a little carrying case. I mean, they're great. So the Ignic, I'm a huge fan of. So we have an Ignic, and then yeah, you can run it right to a fire pit that actually has um, a regulator on it already. Okay, so any other gear you want to share?
Well, I talked about the Magna shades. I think some kind of shade system for your windshield and your side windows for heat and for cold is an important addition. I like the Magna shade because I could see through it. I wanted to be able to see at all times. At night, they can see in, but it's kind of garbly, like they can't see directly in. And
Right.
I still put up my privacy thing when I go to bed. But it's
Yeah.
nice in the day to be able to see out
Yeah.
instead of,
Well, that
those white things that I see people using. And
Yeah, in fact, even though I don't have a leisure travel van, Pagosa Supply is still going strong, still making all kinds of great stuff for leisure travel vans and stuff. And that is one of our next big products. It's not the Magna Shade like it exists, like what you have, where you put magnets on magnets on the inside of your windows, but it's going to be an exterior. But it's the same concept because I got one of those. I got the prototype and used it on my leisure, and it is a game changer.
yeah,
I mean, I love that thing because yeah, you can see outside and it blocks like 99% of the sun or 95%. It's fantastic. So definitely an exterior sunshade is fantastic. Okay, now you don't do a lot of boondocking, but water is always a concern. I mean, do you carry a lot of water while you're driving?
that depends on what my next stay is going to be. So I had a lot of state beaches or state parks in California this year. They had such a bad winter that a lot of their parks had been damaged. A lot of the water systems had been compromised. So they let you know before you got there that you better bring your own water. The entirety of the Baja was almost total boondocking. I think out of 5 weeks, I had 4 campgrounds where I could plug in my RV, even though we were in a lot of times full service campgrounds. My EMS told me not to put my RV plug into that plug. So,
Yeah. Hey,
um,
I bet you're
water.
glad you got that Lithionics now, right?
Oh, yes. Well, that's why I got it. I got it because I knew that I was going to do this trip, and I knew that electricity in Mexico goes up and down. Like you could watch my EMS do this all day, and that's not good for your electrical either.
No.
So, but water became the second most important thing on the trip in the Baja and in Southern California, actually, when I finished, like Anza Borrego and the Salton Sea. There were a couple places where I had to come with full tanks. So I've actually started, when I make my schedule, I actually also now put in there if I need to fill up or dump before I get to the next campground. Because, some campgrounds you couldn't dump at this year. It was really kind of logistically interesting to put this entire 6 months together. I did a lot of sucking fresh water into my rig using the little suction thing. I would hook up to Mexican water only to shower and to do dishes. It would never get into my freshwater system. I wouldn't allow that. But I do use a few things, even though it's just me. I do sometimes do a run of Harvest House, which is boondocking. It's just boondocking in a specific place. But you need to have your water. So if I'm going somewhere where I'm boondocking, I will come with a full tank. It's just, I don't want to have to worry about things like that. And I don't necessarily worry about gas mileage. I know there's a lot of gentlemen out there that'll go, oh, your gas mileage will go down. I know that. But I also know that I want to have water when I get where I'm going. So it depends. I do use a nice high-rimmed plastic bowl inside my sink because I think the LTV sink is beautiful, but it's far too big. You don't need that much room, and it's a big waste of water. So I use this little bowl, and I wash my dishes in the little bowl. And a lot of times I don't let that water go down the sink. I'll put it in the toilet because I run out of gray water before I run out of black tank.
That's a good tip. That's a good tip. Yeah, because if you're just getting your RV, your tanks will fill up way faster than you think they will, and so a shower you can be like at zero, and you take one shower and you're like, I'm in trouble already, and so your black tank will fill up less fast than your gray tank, and Janet does that generally if she's washing dishes. Which she's not. She makes me wash the dishes most of the time anyway. But anyway, no, she's doing it. We use a bucket, same thing, where we wash in there, so it doesn't necessarily go straight down the gray tank. All right. So as we wrap up this episode, give me a story or a memory, something that just makes what you do, because you talked about somebody will say, oh, if you do that, then you're a gas mountain. I can tell you, Lori knows more about RVing than anybody who's talking, because you have done. 200 nights a year is amazing for the last 3 years?
3 years, yeah.
Yeah, 3 years, and so. You've already RV'd in your RV more than I will in my lifetime, right? So you know your stuff. But anyway, through all of those 3 years, 200 nights of camping, give me a story, give me something, a memory, something that says every time you have to unhook your Subi, or every time your electricity doesn't work, every time you get a knock and says you have to move sites, what makes it all worth it, Lori?
I think one of the most memorable memories I have on the road came last year after the Winkler Rally. I did a central Canada, US, around Lake Superior, close to Lake Superior and the Canadian Shield. And I stopped at a provincial park called Rushing River. And this was predominantly to kayak, and I kayaked that day. I think I did 50 kilometers in my kayak. But as I pulled up, so a lot of times with your kayak, the launch is quite a ways from where your RV is. So the Subaru makes kayaking easy. because you take the kayak there, then you unload and you load it back up when you're done, and you're not hauling it. You're not trying to park your LTV on a boat ramp. So I pulled up to the boat ramp, and this was the very first time I was going to kayak after my knee replacement. And as I was getting ready, and I was going a little slower because I knew I was going for a long day and I wanted to have all the proper equipment, two guys pull up in a white van, and out they come, and they were First Nations. And they started blessing the river. I watched everything that they did before they even put their fishing poles into the water. And I was smiling because I've done a lot of research on First Nations through my LTV. And they said hi, and we started a conversation. And I had learned enough that I was able to ask this gentleman, can you tell me your people's origination story? And this guy's eyes lit up. And he went, oh, you know about First Nations? I said, I do. And I want to know, first of all, I don't know what tribe you are. I have no idea where I am. Well, he told me his whole story, and then he said, would you let me bless your boat? Because it looks like you're going on a big trip today. And I said, well, this is my first trip, and I explained it to him. So we went through this whole ritual of blessing my boat. And I said, I actually drum with the First Nations in Calgary. Do you guys, he goes, we're here as a family this weekend. I would like to invite you to come to our family powwow tonight. So not only did I get my boat blessed, which made me amazingly happy through the whole kayak, but I got to sit with their family and frame drum in the middle of the Canadian Shield under a beautiful starry night. And that's why these wonderful vehicles are pretty amazing.
That is an amazing story. Like, how else would you run into them and be able to have that experience?
Yeah. And just striking up a conversation with someone who's different than you. I do that a lot in campgrounds because I've been, I've been all over the southern US in some states where a lot of people don't even want to go RVing. And I've made a lot of good friends from all different walks of life in campgrounds that way.
I think that's great. Well, one of the things too, Lori is now a leisure explorer, meaning she writes blog posts for leisure travel vans. I think I'm a leisure explorer. I don't know yet. If they haven't told me I'm not anymore, since I don't own a leisure travel van anymore. But anyway, yeah, so it's a lot of fun. So I'll link Lori's leisure travel vans explorer page as well. So go check out her blog posts and all of that good stuff. But I know you're having a blast, and I've missed you. Yeah, I've missed you. We haven't talked that much lately, obviously. And so, but I always enjoy seeing your posts, seeing where you are and your adventures, and you're living the dream that many people don't get to live. And so I know you feel extremely blessed for that. So, but anyway, thank you for sharing your time with us. And you never know. We'll see you out there on the road.
We will.
Janet and I are getting out soon, and we haven't been out in the RV since September of last year.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's been a crazy last half of 23, first half of 24, but we're getting some things wrapped up that we were suddenly thrown into some responsibilities for. And so, but yeah, we'll get back out there and see everybody out on the road. So
I bet your dogs miss it.
Oh gosh, yeah, they do. Yeah, they really do. And so I'm excited to get them back out too. But because Roxy, she's 14 now, and and she's the one that loves it the most. So I want to make sure she gets as many trips she can, and she's ready to go. But anyway, well, Lori, thanks a million, and I'll link her LTV page down below, and maybe some of the stuff. Send me some of the stuff that your clamshell you use. I know people are going to want to know that your braking system, all of that, and we'll put that and make a blog post about it as well. So anyway, Lori, safe travels out there. Enjoy that Oregon misty weather that you're in right now, and I hope that another park ranger doesn't come and tell you to move again.
So do I. I've moved enough for one day.
Yeah,
it's
for
great
sure.
talking to you, Brandon.
Yeah. All right, Lori. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.